Hello everyone, today as group 13 composed by Geraldine, Larrotta, Yesenia, Capera and who is talking, Susana, Restrepo, we are going to talk about framework for educational change. Nowadays, learning environments have some important facts to consider to understand how they meet the learner needs and help improve students' learning. In this way, it can execute change and make decisions that allow the different contexts to become a reference to innovation learning environments in the community. In this video, we present two learning environments with some tensions that in our opinion can be treated and useful to conclude.
According to CHIA 2022, there are some principles in order to create a nice reference framework for any institution. They focus on authenticity, alignment, holistic aims, feedback, judgment, and future orientations. This environment has into account some of them, but it's fairly far to achieve those goals, since for example, there is not a diversity of scenarios, because it depends on the school plan in as much as they are children and sometimes it implies a big responsibility for teachers to take them outside the classroom. That's why educators prefer to keep the learning process inside the classroom to avoid issues and injuries. But that causes a bias in the process since it implies not being able to connect directly with the different possible environments. That's why it could be very interesting to use the e-tools of an online education. It could be very useful to take them outside without being outside the classroom. Even if in the pandemic, most teachers were required to move online almost immediately with no training and tools. So most of them had to use numerous learning resources. So in this moment, it is seen that actually you can use many resources in which you can travel around the world and in this way know about societies, cultures, places, among others. So there are many options to explore.
So here we have learning skills for the 21st century. So here it's really important to take into account that a flexible curriculum plays an important role into this kind of population because the students are rejected by some teachers and the strategies or the topics that they must study in different subjects at the school, so they are not adjusted for their necessities. So here it's important that the curriculum must recognize the differences between individual students and acknowledge that each student has different prior knowledge and skills. So basically, the learning style. So as we teachers, we need to take advantage of those special needs in order to help them, so to have the opportunity to contribute to that kind of situation. And finally, the learning environment must be the place that all the students can learn without the disabilities in this case. And that's it.
Teachers used to fit different social-cultural environments of education, not only face-to-face, but online also in this case. But there is a tension that appears in all of them, that is due to some students being left behind. In the traditional classroom, teachers can monitor the students and accommodate their pace to adjust anyone who needs extra time. In an online learning environment, it's more difficult to do so, since it is harder to read body language virtually. Learners may stay silent or maybe put on a brave face and then leave the class feeling discouraged, frustrated, and have learned nothing. That is why the necessity for them to understand and communicate their doubts is increasing every day. That is the reason why it's important for teachers to set themselves up for success by asking for information on any relevant apps they may not understand or how to access the classes. Also, teachers must be sure students know how to raise concerns, whether it be during the online course, through email, or any different way of communication. Another one can be also establishing some class rules, such as, for example, keep their cameras turned on and ask them for their specific needs.
So on the other hand, we have some difficulties when students were classes at home. So in this part, so it's really important to promote blended learning, which can work taking into account students' needs and interests considering the context of the student. So in this part, the student takes an important role. The students are being prepared for their life. So there are some cases that the students have the opportunity to communicate with native people, and that is the purpose, that through the social media they can develop the language, learn of English. And finally, so it's really important to have the student as the person who is in the central process. So the learning environment takes an important role because for inclusion, it's really necessary to generate ideas to contribute with these kind of students who feel rejected by the others because they don't have the same abilities, but they have the same opportunities if we do these kind of things that I mentioned before.
As a conclusion, learning environments are not only class spaces, but any place in which learning process is carried out. And also in this context, inclusive education is an issue to resolve. After the pandemic, the use of technology became into a very important tool, but probably was always one of the solutions of several things in education. It means a change in how we teach, require a curriculum adaptation, and with that last one, the use of technology as a learning environment is a resource of inclusion even in this context and should be taken more into account.